Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming in this afternoon on a beautiful summer afternoon with the sun shining. And we are going to call the Committee of the Whole meeting for Tuesday, September 2nd to order at 3:30 in our council chamber. And before we adopt the agenda for today, I'll just remind everybody we're meeting on the traditional territory of our friends and neighbors, Collahuaman Nation. And we will ask if there are any additions or deletions that council wants to make to our agenda today. Seeing none, call for adoption of today's agenda. Moved by Councillor Southcott. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. So we now move onwards to public input period number 6. And that's an opportunity for the public to come forward and express opinions of items that are on the agenda, referring to legislative matters, committee recommendations, and new business. And if you could just state your name and address, and you have the floor. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Kathy. Does that work? Okay. Hi, my name is Kathy Shainfeld. I live at 5386 Laburnum Avenue, but I'm here making a comment on behalf of Stephen Miller, who unfortunately could not be here today. It goes as such. In October of last year, Council made a motion to direct staff to work with Stephen Miller to do a report on the 80 acres of old golf course lands with the view to examining placing the lands into a trust. To date, no work has been done that I know of. As every seaside town is trying to reclaim their oceanfront to benefit tourism and continue on the path of a healthy environment, I believe more now than ever that a protected land trust is an opportunity to preserve the environment for our generation and our children in the next generation. The city would save money by establishing either directly or indirectly a land trust, and this could be one initiative that brings 99% of the community together in a very positive way. We believe there is strong support for this initiative. The city owns approximately 245 properties, of which many of them are industrial and mixed-use residential. It would not be a stretch for the city to establish a land trust on one of them and live up to their slogan of coastal by nature. Thank you.
Thank you for your message within the 2-minute limit. Just before you sit down, Council, do you have any questions or comments you would like to make in this regard? We don't allow that? Oh, that's a real shame that we can't communicate with you in this regard. But I allowed your presentation today because we do have an item on our agenda referring to city-owned land. So thank you for coming forward and expressing your opinion here today.
Thank you very much.
Oh, anyone else from the gallery that wishes to step forward? 2 minutes. Second time, anybody wanting to step forward? And a third time, anybody online? Seeing none, we will move forward on today's agenda. Thank you very much. So we now move to general matters. 7.1, delegation, Mr. Guy Hawkins, regarding letter to the Minister of Finance. Mr. Hawkins, please step forward.
Thank you. Is that working? Yeah.
Yeah, just speak loud and clear so the members online can hear you.
Pardon me?
Just speak loud and clear so that our members that are online can hear you.
Okay. Thank you for allowing me to come here and speak. This is further to, I was here about a year and a half ago with basically the same kind of issue. So I'd refer you to the handout that you have. And if you turn to the second page is a graph. And, they say, a picture says words or something. So when we look at this graph, we see that in 1867, all the way up until we get into the 1960s, it's just at the very bottom line of the graph. And then it just shoots off like crazy. Well, the problem is that something happened to make that, shoot off like that. And what it was they amended the Bank of Canada Act. Right? So when they amended the Bank of Canada Act, they allowed the Bank of Canada to accept interest-bearing deposits. Now, I could, talk a lot about banking and stuff, but I'll just try to be real brief. The bank calls it a deposit and the piece of paper says deposit. But banks that isn't what they do. They don't accept deposits. No bank accepts a deposit. What the bank does do is they accept a loan. When you give that way the money belongs to the bank. You go to the bank and you trade your money for a deposit receipt. That money now belongs to the bank, right? So when the Bank of Canada starts borrowing money at interest is when this thing takes off. But the Bank of Canada was created in 1934. It was really a liberal initiative. And in 1936, it was a public-private setup. And in 1934, by 1936, the government had bought up controlling interest. And they wanted to carry on. But the federal government, which was also liberal at the time, I believe, said, well, we're already controlling it. But the big mover was Jerry McGeer from Vancouver, well-known mayor in the 20s. He was an MLA. He was an MP. And they were pushing for 100%. So by 1938, the bank became 100% owned by the government. That makes it a public utility, like the ferries, like BC Hydro, like a public utility. And if you look on the graph, you'll see that the interest that we were paying on our debt is just like minimal. It's just way at the little bottom there. And that's because the Bank of Canada was financing the government. And this was it was quite well known, starting in the 20s. The idea was, why would a sovereign government with the sole right to create the nation's currency give that right away to private interests and borrow back that which it can create for free at interest? It only makes sense to a banker. It certainly doesn't make sense to any just ordinary person, a Canadian. Why would we do that? And so that we had that until they changed the Bank of Canada Act. And when they changed the Bank of Canada Act, and then all of a sudden the Bank of Canada now has loans that it has to pay interest on. Well, that money they started lending to the government. So we didn't get interest-free loans anymore. All of a sudden we're paying, and we are paying, private investors. Now, you'll see in my letter that that is in fact extortion. It's extortion because just this graph, just look at the graph. We don't have to pay interest to private investors. We don't have to do that. This is extortion. Plain and simple, extortion and racketeering. We have $1 trillion in debt. But because it was gained by extortion, we're not liable. No court in any part of the world will enforce a contract that was gained by extortion. Just not. So this is a problem that we can address just by saying, no, it's over. We're done. But we need to make a little bit of noise, like me coming here, that this is some kind of noise, but we need to move forward. So the action that I suggested would be that to take this to, it's called, I think it's the municipal governments, I think in Victoria there, they have their own building, but you'd know more about that. But all the, the municipalities and cities. So if you take this information and people in British Columbia go, yeah, and get mad and get riled up, then we can do something. So what I'm asking you is to make that step, to begin the process of doing something, because we've been worked over by the bankers. And bankers, I mean, my father was a bank manager. I worked in the bank. The bankers here, we're not talking about the commercial banks. We're not talking about the ordinary people and the banks in town and stuff. No, they're fine. We're talking like the big guys.
Okay, Mr. Hawkins, thank you very much. I see that your time expired some time ago, but I'm going to ask the mayor and council if they have questions for you today. We can ask questions of delegations. So does anybody want to step forward here? Seeing anybody jumping into the fray? Councillor Elliott, thank you.
Thank you for bringing your concerns to our council and sharing this delegation with us. Likely the reason we're not getting a lot of questions is because it's kind of outside of our jurisdiction to comment at this point on the banking policies for the government of Canada. And it's not that we're not listening, it's just very difficult for us to make a comment within our jurisdiction that is about something from outside of our jurisdiction. But we have the delegation and all of your writing as a public thing. We each one of us can advocate in our own ways at various forums. So I'd encourage you to talk to individual councillors to see if you can make your case that way as well. When we go to these forums, we speak individually sometimes as advocating. If we want to advocate together, we'd have to have some sort of a decision together, which we haven't had at this point.
Thank you for that. But I will add that it does affect you because you're paying interest on the money that the council borrows. And the Bank of Canada was set up that you would get your money with no interest in the same way that the province and the federal government gets it. So it does affect you. If you look at how much the interest charge on that sewer is, look how much money you're going to pay by the time that's paid off, it's huge. Well, you wouldn't be paying any of that interest, none of it, because that money would have been supplied by the Bank of Canada.
Thank you for that note. Councillor Almeida.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you for coming today. I did want to share, I don't know if you've come across the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, but there's a...
I have.
Yeah, so I know I've seen some of their material over the years. I'm looking at their website there. They talk about the debt clock, and this seems to be material that is even more up their alley in terms of, because they're constantly... what's the word I'm looking for here? They're always in talks and protests is coming to mind, but that's not the right word. But they're constantly pushing the federal government for changes, and obviously this is a big change for the federal government. So definitely, as Councillor Elliott said, council members can do a little bit, but the Taxpayer Federation's a much bigger group with a bigger voice that can also spread that word.
Well, thank you for that. The Taxpayers Federation, I'm aware of, they are what's called controlled opposition. Their economist quoted the fractional reserve banking system, which doesn't exist. It's like when we make those people say those things, the bank doesn't come out and say, we don't have a fractional reserve system like you're talking about. That isn't what we do. They just go, oh, well, whatever. And economists do not learn about banking. It's not part of the course of becoming, right? So the thing with the Taxpayers Federation is, if you look at Harper and those guys, all they did was they offloaded. They were pretending that the reason we were having a problem is that the government was spending too much money. And so they offloaded a bunch of federal stuff onto the provinces and, we like do that kind of thing. Well, that wasn't the problem. That's not the problem at all. The problem is the interest. And they know that. Harper knew that. The Canadian taxpayer, they know that. You just have to, it's the interest. But the Canadian taxpayers it's like a front group. It's like, as I said, I don't know if you're familiar with the term controlled opposition, but that is anyway, a term that you use for people that are actually, you think they're working one way, but no, actually they're working another way. And I'll say that quite openly about the Canadian Taxpayers Federation.
Hawkins, I'll just wrap this up with one further question. And that is just a simple yes or no answer. And that is the material you've produced on the Canadian financial system and how it operates. Does that extrapolate to other countries in the world? Are they doing the same thing?
Yes. If you look at the letter, if you read the letter to to the minister, well, and I say like it's in the at one of the meetings. It was the I'm sorry, I'm too old, getting confused. But it was like in the government, it was stated that an issue of paper by the federal government has the same buying power as gold. That the whole thing about this gold-backed currency is ridiculous. I mean, you print up paper and trade it for gold. Like, there's no, you see what I mean? Like, people are just kind of like a little bit mixed up. And so every government can do exactly that. Every government, they're the ones they're the only right. They have the only right. And then they give it away to private. Like, why would they do that? So like all the European governments are just like ours. They're all going to collapse. Everybody's in debt, trillions of dollars. And none of it needed to happen. None of it.
Okay, Mr. Hawkins, I'm going to have to end our discussion there. Thank you for informing council today and the members of the public that are here and online. We appreciate you coming in.
Well, thank you again, and thank you for asking me questions, and I'm available, you can, whatever. Thanks very much.
Thank you. And next on our delegation, we have Mr. George Orchiston regarding January 1st, 2025. Tourism Powell River Service Agreement was broken by Tourism Powell River. Mr. Orchiston.
Compromise between my eyesight and the microphone here. Good afternoon, council and staff. Thanks for having me here. George Orchiston, 3377 Joyce Avenue. I've reduced my presentation to writing and provided the council with an update. So I'm just going to read from it so I can make the 5 minutes. Okay, thank you. Were the January 1st, 2024 to December 31st, 2028 Tourism Powell River service agreements between Tourism Powell River and the City of Powell River breached by Tourism Powell River when, without discussion or approval by the City of Powell River, it used funds provided by the city to change its name from Tourism Powell River to Cathet Tourism Society? Is this taxpayer justified in requesting that should the Tourism Society decline to change its present name back from Cathet Tourism to Tourism Powell River, then Powell River City Council shall provide Tourism Society with 90 days written notice of termination of the agreement as per Section 2.3 of that Tourism Powell River Service Agreement. To assist Council in this matter, I've attached a timeline and relevant associated documents. Now, in December 2023, Council reported that it approved the Powell River Tourism Service Agreement for 2024. Also in early 2024, Council invited Tourism Powell River to submit a proposal for tourism services for the time period of January 1st, 2025 through December 31st, 2028. Tourism Powell River was pleased with the opportunity to promote tourism on behalf of the city, and at the end of July 2024, Council instructed city staff to enter into a 4-year tourism agreement for over $500,000. The parties to the new Tourism Powell River Service Agreement are the City of Powell River and Tourism Powell River. At 5.4 and 5.4b of the agreement, we find a very important binding pledge or promise made by Tourism Powell River. Quote, the society covenants and agrees to use funds provided to it by the city pursuant to this agreement exclusively for the following purposes. B, to promote the city of Powell River as a tourism destination. And when I finish, I hope I got enough time to make a minor comment on this statement here. I'll go back to the bottom of page 1. Now, name change of a party to the agreement is not on the list at section 5.4a through G. At its October 15, 2024 annual general meeting, Tourism Powell River adopted a special resolution to change its name from Tourism Powell River to Cathet Tourism. The record establishes that Tourism Powell River was engaged in its name change initiative as early as August 2024 through to March 2025, using funds provided to it by the city rather than spending those funds to promote the city of Powell River as a tourism destination. Now, should either party determine that a particular provision in the Tourism Powell River Service Agreement no longer suits them, Section 11.6 amendments of that agreement provide that a party has option to pursue change. However, as of this date, the Tourism Society has never written to Council seeking any amendment to Section 5.4 of the Tourism Powell River Service Agreement. Conclusion. To be clear, I do agree that a society would normally have the legal right to change its name. However, in this case, Tourism Powell River entered into an agreement with the city of Powell River and made covenant and agreed that it would promote the city of Powell River as a tourism destination, not Cathet. Is it logical to say that changing the name Tourism Powell River to Cathet Tourism is promoting Powell River as a tourism destination? I think not. By using city funds to change its name from Tourism Powell River to Cathet Tourism, the society breached Section 8.1c of the Tourism Services Agreement. Quote, the society starts to expend city funding on time, energy, or activities that are beyond the scope of the services described in this agreement. See Section 5.4a through G. There is no listed agreed upon activity permitting name change. It's not listed as A through G, can't spend city money on it. Tourism Society further breached Section 5.2 of the agreement by failing to provide mandatory quarterly reports to the city detailing the activities of the society. No such detailed report by the Tourism Society on the subject of name change was ever provided to City Council. Now, should the Tourism Society be unwilling to change its name back from Cathet Tourism Society to Tourism Powell River, I would urge City Council to instruct staff to provide 90 days notice of termination of the current tourism service agreement. I'd like to go back to the bottom of page 1, if I may, briefly. I'll just read it and comment. The society covenants and agrees to use funds provided to it by the city pursuant to this agreement exclusively for the following purposes: to promote the city of Powell River as a tourism destination. Now, at the beginning, the top line, it says covenants and agrees. This agreement we have and the commitment that the Tourism Society made is simply not an agreement. We made a covenant to the city and the taxpayers that it wouldn't spend the money on anything other than the things listed in A through G in Section 5.4. Covenant's almost like a religious pledge. You're swearing your honor not to spend the city's money on things that are not listed A through G. It's simply not an agreement. It's a pledge or a promise. That's what covenant means. And it didn't happen. And council must straighten it out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Orchiston. Just before you sit down, we have a couple of councillors with their hands in the air here. And first up, we have Mr. Councillor Almeida.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for coming today, Mr. Orchiston. A couple questions or a couple of things that you brought up. With regards to the funds for the name change, the Tourism Society receives funding from 3 primary sources, one being the city, one being the RD, but they also have revenue that comes from their members. Businesses that are in the hospitality sector choose whether or not they wish to be members of the Tourism Society, regardless of whether the society runs the visitor center or not. I would presume that those funds that they've used in membership dues are what they've used to maintain their society status, and also what they would have used to do whatever was necessary to get their name changed as well. So the funds that we provide are strictly for the visitor center, and they've continued to use those funds for the visitor center. The second thing you mentioned was whether they had legal standing or not. This matter was, I guess, first sent to council maybe May or June when the society first changed their name, and all the society's done is changed their own name. They haven't changed the name of the visitor center. The sign on the front of the building, last I checked, still said Visitor Information Center, and anything that referenced Powell River still says Powell River on their website and the signage outside. I had asked staff at the time if that change impacted the agreement that was set with the city. A legal opinion was garnered in June, and while that legal opinion wasn't shared publicly, it did come back saying that in the eyes of the legal team, nothing had been breached.
Next up, thank you, Councillor Almeida, for shedding light on that. Next up, we have Councillor Southcott, followed by Councillor Dowd. Oh, your response to
Just a brief.
Councillor Almeida.
I'll be arrogant enough to say I disagree with your legal counsel's decision. I only heard the word agreement out of you. I just explained to you that this commitment by the Tourism Board, Tourism Society, is more than a simple agreement. It's like a personal promise or pledge not to spend the money. If it's not listed, the issue is not listed in A through G of the agreement. No, leave it there.
Thank you, Mr. Orchiston. Councillor Southcott.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Orchiston. At the risk of redundancy, I'm just going to mention that my view is that it's very possible that even the money invested in Kethet Tourism Society now from the Kethet Regional District is likely more applied to the economic or financial benefits of the city than it is to the Kethet region, because most of the business that benefits from tourism dollars is actually in this region comes to the city, because most of our businesses are here. I don't have a study or anything to prove that, but that is my view. Unfortunately, it muddies your contention in my mind because of the money that does come from the regional district board that's exclusively from the regional district. Now, there's a little bit of the general grants and aid that actually contributes to the Kethet Regional District's contribution, which is shared by the city, but it's a very minor portion of that, so I don't consider it to be that significant. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that, and basically Councillor Almeida covered everything else that I had in mind. Thank you for coming.
Mr. Orchiston.
I'd like to, thank you for that. And on that issue, I'd like to refer you to the failure of the society at the bottom of page 2, where I mentioned that the society, in my opinion, has violated Section 5.2 of the agreement by failing to provide mandatory quarterly reports and detailing the activities of the society. Now, if you, taxpayers' perspective, where is the accountability? Not a single quarterly report in all this time has been made to council. Where is the financial responsibility and accountability here?
I think there's annual reports, but you're right. I don't remember seeing quarterly reports.
Mr. Almeida, you have a response?
As the
Councillor Almeida.
thank you, Chair. As the liaison for the tourism board, maybe that was a misunderstanding on my part to share that more with council, but the Tourism Society meets 9 times a year, aside from the summer and December, and I'm at almost every one of those meetings, and at every one of those meetings, a financial report is provided. That information has been shared with city staff. And so I'm sure our CAO will look into whether we need to report it any differently, but staff has received the information, and myself as liaison have received that information on a monthly basis.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Doe. Oh, Mr. Orchison, go right ahead.
Just a comment on that. Direct you to 5.2, which I discussed in my presentation. The society shall provide the city with progress reports by March, June, September, December. Shall, it's a mandatory report. And it shall detail the activities of the society for the preceding quarter. Whether or not council decides to send one of its members to observe what's going on at that outfit's meeting is irrelevant. In the agreement, it mandatorily requires that the society will provide progress reports, period. That doesn't get dismissed by a councillor showing up. For example, I did go to the city's website and view in February, I believe it was 2024, yourself attending the council meeting, and your report to council from the meeting essentially was, the society really is enjoying the money we've sent them. That was not a progress report. Helping the citizens justify that their tax money has been spent wisely. They're obligated to provide the report, not just hope a city councilor takes some info back to council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Orchison. Councillor Doe.
Oh, thanks, Mr. Orchison. First off, my opinion and the opinion coming from reading a legal opinion that city staff has shared with us, reading the agreement between the city of Powell River and tourism, Cassette Tourism, having read those things, that there isn't a breach, including annual reporting or quarterly reporting, because we do get reports from Councillor Alameda about significant things that happen. On the city's funding, as Councillor Alameda said, the city is not the only funder of the tourism, of Cassette Tourism. The Cassette Regional District also provides funding, and the members of the board of the Cassette.
Point of order, please. Is there a question?
I'm responding to Mr. Orchison's request, and I have an answer for his request, if that's okay, Mr. Chair.
Go right ahead, Councillor Doe.
So where was I? So I was at the different sources of funding, okay? The Cassette Tourism is made up of a group of individuals who have tourism businesses. They're local businesses within the regional district and within the city. They provide funding. The Cassette Regional District provides funding, and the city provides funding. So the society is totally capable of funding a simple thing like a name change without using city funds. We have there is nothing in the contract, by the way, that suggests that Cassette Tourism has to provide a Powell River Visitor Center. The language, and you've read it, says that they have to provide a visitor center. That's also very similar to the language that's in the Sunshine Coast Tourism, another organization that provides tourism information and tourism promotion for the city of Powell River, without having the name Powell River in its name. They provide destination marketing. They're funded by the city of Powell River and the Cassette Regional District as well. So I'm going to leave it at that. I don't think there's any breach. I don't think we need to inform Cassette Tourism that we're going to violate our contract, and I think they're doing a good job, and they should be appreciated, because the name change, I think, is the least important of all the things they're doing.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Doe. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Orchiston. My question, I guess, would be, to staff, we manage all of our contracts and contribution agreements and the reporting requirements. Do we have any reason to believe the money that we put in that contract is being spent somewhere that it shouldn't be?
Chair, no.
Thank you.
Uh,
Question, thanks.
Mr. Orchison.
That was a quick answer. What's that based on? How would you know what money they're using? We just heard a couple of presentations that there's all kinds of money coming in to the society. How do you know it's coming from Powell River?
Good question.
Right?
Good question.
Where's the foundation for that answer?
I'm not too sure why this delegation is actually still here with the 5 minutes that have been allowed for the delegation in response to questions have passed already, and it's not really turning into a productive thing. This is supposed to be an opportunity for council to listen and ask follow-up questions. But in regards to that, nothing has been brought forward from Councillor Almeida or from staff in regards to anything being used for purposes other than what's in the actual agreement.
Okay, so I don't see any other. I've got a couple of questions and words of clarification that I'd like to make. This is a messy situation. Let me say that first. When you look at the agreement, you look at the guidelines that are supposed to be followed, there are a lot of questions in my mind. First one I have is of Councillor Almeida. And Councillor Almeida, you are an observer. You do not vote on that board. So when you were in attendance of the...
Chair, point of order. Okay, we're responding to a delegation.
Yes,
from
I'm
a
trying to
member,
get to the heart of
from
the
a
matter.
member of the public,
Councillor.
and you're turning it into a question and answer session.
I just have a simple question because Councillor Almeida is our
I think you're out
representative.
of order.
So the question, Councillor Almeida, was the discussion on the name change at the Powell River Tourism Center board meeting that day, was it an open or a closed meeting?
I believe all of their meetings are open, maybe not publicly advertised, but it was the October meeting was their AGM, which is open. Councillor Dowd has attended while not being a member of the board in the past, and other members of the community have seen there before, so it is an open meeting.
So I asked the question because the timelines of notification for me as a councillor sitting in this chair are a little vague. When that decision was made, I remember sitting in this council chamber when Councillor Almeida made an announcement that the Tourism Society was changing their name. And at that time, I didn't quite sharp enough to twig in that it was the Powell River Tourism Center when he made his announcement. So we were never formally notified that this had happened. I have correspondents that have gone to the regional district that I've seen that they were formally notified. I have never seen anything up until today about a legal opinion because the information I received earlier today when I asked the mayor about this situation, and I received correspondence, indicates that mayor and council were notified about a legal opinion back on June 28th. So I'm saying to myself, how can that be? I never saw this correspondence. So I checked my email, Mr. Orchison, and lo and behold, I had received nothing on June 28th of a legal opinion regarding our tourism society. So it's kind of surprising to me. First I saw is a legal opinion today, and I'm not going to say whether I agree or not because it's a legal issue, whether who is right on the legal points when you look at the process that they are supposed to be following. But I think there is some obligation that we need to hold somebody accountable when we.
Point of order, Chair. When someone raises a point of order, conversation stops, and then I get to have a chance.
Are you in the chair, Councillor?
I challenge the chair. when someone raises a point of order, our procedure bylaw says that conversation stops and I have an opportunity to explain my point of order. And then you have a chance to respond to it.
Go ahead.
Our procedure bylaw outlines the time for delegations and question and answer, and we are beyond that. And so I suggest that we move on and thank the delegation.
Okay, so let's vote on whether we want to sustain the discussion or close it.
There is
all in favor of sustaining the discussion.
Point of order, Chair. Yeah, there are outlines for how to respond to a point of order. We don't vote on it. You rule on it first. And then if you rule on my point of order, whether you sustain it or you don't.
Okay, so my rule is that we continue the discussion to get to all the information out on this subject today. And I guess it's up to council to vote on this. And are you in favor of continuing discussion?
I would challenge the chair on that because we're not getting information out, and you are referencing in camera now, which you can't be doing. So I am
not referencing in camera because Mr. Almeida said it was an open meeting.
So I would challenge the chair.
Sorry, could you define what I referenced that was in a closed meeting?
So right now we're in the middle of a point of order. You ruled to continue with the conversation and override the point of order. I'm challenging the chair on that point of view so we can vote on whether to move along as suggested by the point of order or to sustain the chair and go with your ruling.
Okay.
So to call a vote, you say, shall the chair be sustained, which means we would agree with you. And if we say no, then we don't agree with you.
Oh. Let's vote. Do we sustain the chair? All in favor?
No, not in favor.
So I guess that ends our discussion in terms of this particular issue. But it probably is not going to be the end of this. Thank you, Mr. Orchiston, for bringing us forward today.
If I may, one last thing. You mentioned that legal opinion, that it's public.
It's not.
Is it public? Or
it is not.
Top secret? The public be provided a copy of it?
TAO?
Hello. My understanding is that it hasn't been released to the public.
Asking, can it be?
This is something that we would have to discuss in closed session about the release of the in-camera information, but we can do that. Sorry, you can't hear me? Okay. Yeah, this mic isn't very good. We'll have to have that conversation in closed sessions about releasing the legal opinion.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Orchiston. And we move on to today's agenda with item consent agenda. First of all, for item 8.1, the adoption of the minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting held on August 19th, 2025.
Move the consent agenda.
So moved. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. We now move to new business, city-owned lands, manager of city development. And on that note, I'm going to turn this over to CAO Sundance for an update on staffing.
Thanks, Chair Paul. Hopefully this mic's a little bit better, which it does. I would like to introduce Melissa Howie, who is the new manager of city development for the city of Powell River. Melissa started with the city on August 11th, so she's had just under a month to get things underway here. One of the key objectives for this new role will be to plan, organize, and direct the operations, programs, policies, and activities to support council directions related to land development initiatives that improve housing and affordability, along with economic sustainability and community well-being. And she's introducing her first report today on city properties. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm before you this afternoon with a report on city-owned land and a recommendation for further direction This report is following up on discussion that was had at the August 21st regular council meeting regarding requests for the use of city-owned land and past recommendations. Staff are actively working on several city-owned land initiatives, including the further development of City Property Policy 271 and housing actions with BC Housing related to the temporary shelter and complex way supportive housing project, both of which contain city-owned land components. Attached to your report is the Urban Systems Land Management Strategy that provides a detailed inventory of surplus city-owned lands. This document identifies these 25 surplus sites and provides additional information with respect to land use designation and zoning. Also attached to your report is a summary of the recommendations passed during this current council term that include some component of city-owned lands. Of those 28 recommendations, 13 have been complete and 15 remain actively in progress, including requests for reports regarding the use of city-owned land from the Powell River Orphan Wildlife Society, the Cothet Pickleball Association, and Four Tides Hospice Society. Each of these reports will require detailed work from staff to provide council with information about the suitability of land, alignment with land use designations, zoning and strategic priorities, and any financial implications of sale or long-term lease. Recent changes in staffing levels has provided some additional capacity in the planning department where the team is now able to advance some of this work on city-owned land. Thank you, and I'm here if you have any questions.
Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you, Chair. So one question about the report compared to the list of resolutions. When we met 2 weeks ago, I guess, the question of we have lots of motions related to land, and it would be good to be able to give staff a sense of prioritization. And so it was thought that you would come back. And there's some land-related motions on the Appendix B list that are like a greater priority to me personally than the 3 that have been listed in the motion. And so I'm wondering about, because that list includes everything from affordable housing to development of city-owned properties, and there's a number of different topics related to city-owned properties. And so I'm wondering about, I guess, whether work on this would mean not being able to work on some of the other things, and like where prioritization of these 3 fits in with some of the other motions that are in progress but haven't come back to council in terms of prioritization. So maybe you can talk a little bit more about how that prioritization works beyond these 3.
Thank you. Through the chair, yes. I think
just a moment. I think we're straying a little bit off the course of the report. I'd like to just stick to the topic that we're dealing with today, which is the three items, and any specific other land. I'd rather just leave out of the conversation for today. I'm trying to speed things up here a little bit. I don't want to get in the weeds on individual pieces of property, if you don't mind.
I disagree, Chair. That is in the report. This is all in the report. The question she's had is about the report.
Oh, okay. So in regards to the 13 other pieces of property that you're...
Yes.
Okay, go right ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair, I think prioritization is certainly something that we're always thinking about, and for council to provide some direction should they choose. These 3 particular requests have some similarities in their use and potential to bring some synergy and some efficiency in dealing with these 3 reports simultaneously as attacking some of those in progress resolutions.
Thank you. Next, we have an extensive speaking order. So next up, we have Councillor Doudt, followed by Councillor Elliott.
And my question, I guess, is simpler. I'm curious why the old golf course lands, and we had a member of the public come and talk about the request from the public actually to take a look at the old golf course lands, and we passed a motion at council that actually passed with only one opposed, that we moved and seconded that staff be directed to work with up to 2 members of council and Stephen Miller to explore the possible benefits of creating or partnering in a land trust in order to preserve, protect, and maintain the land known as the old golf course lands, and further that staff be directed to bring back a report discussing exploratory findings on the various aspects of the land trust concept, including the possible sale of city land and potential. And my question is, why isn't that in one of the requested list of reports? We have 3 reports that staff is suggesting we should go forward with. And there are others that are not in that list, and I'm curious. You know, the timing, the different uses are all interesting, but I'm wondering why this one was left out when it was supported by council.
We have a comment from Mr. Powell.
Good afternoon, committee. Through the chair to Councillor Dowd. We do have confirmation from the corporate officer, Stephen Fleming, who has prepared a report on the old golf course lands and would like to circulate that amongst senior staff before bringing it back. To be fair, the properties file has been spread over many different departments over the last number of years. With new capacity, you're going to see planning staff taking this forward. And so my expectation is that once Mr. Fleming circulates that report and planning staff have had an opportunity to review it as well as other departments, we will be bringing that forward as well. It wasn't included in the recommendation, but it doesn't mean that it's not a priority.
If I can just have a follow-up.
Sure. Well, this is the exact conversation that I was trying to avoid earlier, Councillor Dowd, with specific pieces of property.
It'll just be short.
Mr. Gow, I appreciate your comments, and I'd like to move on to our next speaker.
You tell me
is,
I can't ask my question?
Yes, you can't.
And
I'll politely say that. Next on their speaking list, we have, I believe.
I want to. I'll simply make a motion.
Or Mayor Wasnow. Thank you.
Steve, Councillor Elliott was before me.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Oh, sorry, Councillor. Councillor Dowd's got me a little flustered here. Go right ahead.
That's okay. Well, I'm happy to get to the motion at some point. I think some questions on the report is suitable at this point, and we haven't had a single round yet. And my question has to do with, you mentioned the priorities that we set as a council, our strategic priorities, and I'm wondering if it's possible for us to arrange our in progress in priority according to how they match up with our strategic priorities, and then maybe because if this motion goes forward, it feels like it becomes our new #1 priority, and I don't know how we work as a council to because I'm in favor of the motion, but I'm not necessarily in favor of arranging our list in a way that doesn't support our strategic priorities. This is part of our strategic priorities, but one of the things we've asked for in the past is kind of options for creating a housing authority that would work for us in the future and what that might look like, or some other type thing. And one of the foundations for something like that could be city-owned properties. And so I don't know where we may be impacting our ability to have options on other fronts. And that's the question, I guess, is do we have enough information within the strategic priorities to prioritize our list of motions?
Thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Elliott, I might ask Director Gow to lend a little support there.
Through the chair to Councillor Elliott, perhaps it would be fair to say the council's strategic priorities are quite broad, and as a result, I think all 3 of those in the recommendation before you fall into that. I think the question you're raising is where does that rank in relation to all of council's priorities? And please consider that this is a recommendation from staff, but at the end of the day, if council wishes to give us additional direction or different direction, this is the avenue for you to do so. In part, this is part of staff's challenge, trying to figure out which priority of these many is actually what we should be working on.
Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification, Councillor Gow. We know that you've got a lot on your plate in Planning Department. Mayor Wasnow, go right ahead.
Well, first of all, welcome. I'd just like to inform you that previous councils had refused an offer by the community to produce a land trust on the old golf club lands. So some of the councils here probably remember when that happened, but there's some history there also. The other thing with regard to the pickleball, that was the only recommendation that came forward from a standing committee. So that standing committee had utilized the resources of city staff and outside consultants to prepare that. So you might find that that has a little more depth in terms of preparation work. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification, Mayor. And next we have Councillor Southcott.
Thank you, Chair. I'll make the motion. I move that council direct staff to prepare reports related to requests for the disposition of city-owned land from the Powell River Orphan Wildlife Society, Cathat Pickleball Association, and Fort Tides Hospice Society. And I'd like to speak to this, please.
Ready then, Councillor. Motion is on the floor.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that should read committee.
Noted.
I've followed this whole list over a number of years now. The Hospice Society's been at their work for about 10 years, as we were informed, I think, last meeting. Pickleball Association is relatively new, but supported broadly in this community. I get lobbied constantly, I'm sure we all do, from that organization and supporters of it. Powell's has been also, there's been activism from the local community in the neighborhood of where the operation is occurring right now. I'm not going to go any further into this, but I wholeheartedly support these three projects in the entire list. I think that they're projects that could result in substantive achievement, and I think we need that. And I really appreciate you, Ms. Howie, and the department for selecting these. I think you're giving us an opportunity to do something, which really I support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Southcott. Not seeing any hands in here. I just want to say thank you, staff, for picking out these three items that are strong initiatives being brought forward by very many members of our community. I wholeheartedly support these three initiatives, and I'm looking forward to further developments. Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you, Chair. So I know that in the agenda it mentions that council will, we recommend that council, and the staff had noted previous to the meeting that it should read committee recommend to council. A question through the chair to staff. I know sometimes at the committee level we're able to direct staff to write reports, and I'm wondering if this has to come to council or whether we could direct staff at the committee level.
Committees shouldn't be directing staff. I think that things have been done a little bit helter-skelter, to be honest, in the past, but committees should be recommending that council direct staff. So yeah.
Thank you for that clarity. So in voting, well, we're voting to send this to council to vote on. I am happy to send it to council to be voted on, but when I consider council priorities and where these fit in with some of the other motions that we have related to affordable housing, we had a very passionate delegation about, you know, tiny homes and city-owned land. There's a number of really great ones, and I would prefer to make this motion as part of a package of overall prioritization. And so there are so many worthy actions to take regarding housing. These are not among the top on my staff priorities at this time.
Thank you, Councillor Isaacson. Councillor Doe.
I'm going to make an amendment to the motion there. That's item 12.1. And the amendment is that the motion be amended to include a report on the old golf course lands as approved by council on October 8th, 2024. We don't need a seconder, so I'll just go ahead and speak. And I wanted to make sure that this was included because council had made the motion almost a year ago to have a report. I'm quite encouraged by Director Gao telling us that they're already working on a report and it's almost ready. It just needs to be circulated to staff. So I don't see how this would create an extra level of difficulty to include that other report. And it just shows that we're trying to do something towards these. And I'm not by any means thinking that there won't be questions to answer when we get those reports, because there are a lot of things to think about on each and every one of them. But I think we should just recognize that the old golf course lands are part of what we were talking about, and I'd like to see some progress.
Okay, we have an amendment on the floor. Councillor Elliott, we're speaking to the amendment.
Yeah, I would speak against the amendment. I think that our planning director has explained how the packaged proposals fit together in the kind of work and overlap. Creation of a trust is a completely different type of work, doesn't package well with these three, and I would not want one to be held hostage by additional work required by the other. Having said that, we've already got a motion on our list that asks staff to bring forward a report on the old golf course lands. I think it deserves its own report and should not be sandwiched into this one.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. Mayor Wasnow.
I agree with Councillor Elliott, primarily because a previous council had already declined that the city look at creating a land trust in these lands. So it's that in itself should make it a lower priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Wasnow. We have an amendment on the floor. Seeing no further hands in the air, I'll call the question. All in favor?
The amendment.
The amendment.
Oh.
Just the amendment.
Oh,
all in favor?
In favor of that.
Those opposed? The motion is defeated. Councilor Almeida.
Thank you, Chair. I am in agreement with some of what Councilor Isaacson said about priorities, but at the same time, I'm not opposed to moving forward on this. I guess my question to staff is, should this get voted to council, can we squeeze it into the big agenda that we have on Thursday?
I think the general rule of going from committee of the whole to council is that unless it's a real time sensitive thing, that it just follows the regular course of action, which would be to go to the middle of the month. And as opposed to amending agendas on the fly, I don't think that's a good governance process. And I don't think this is of a high enough priority to do something like that.
Or in other words, in 2 weeks. Councilor Elliott.
On the main motion? I am going to vote in favor of this motion. I would be also favorable to a second motion that asked for some type of process to prioritize the remaining work on the docket, or provide some kind of way for us to prioritize what's left. And I understand that this work might be a little more straightforward and simple than some of the others. And I think it would be a good accomplishment for us to get moving on this.
No further hands. I'm going to call the question to send this forward to council in 2 weeks, but I'll just preface by saying I'm sure the planning department has got a lot of work on their plate right now. All the other lands that you're referring to may need a separate report to prioritize, and that could take a little bit of time. So anyway, appreciate the work, and I'll call the question. All in favor to council in 2 weeks? Those opposed? You're opposed? You're in favor?
No, I want to make a motion after, because we're done
Would
that.
you like your vote recorded?
It's always recorded. We don't have to ask.
That's fine. It's passed. Councilor Elliott.
If it pleases the chair, I'd like to make another motion, and that would be that the committee recommend to staff that they bring a recommended priority of the listing that is attached in Appendix A, so that council can have some input into how that is prioritized for the remaining, if that makes sense.
Sundance.
Just one point of clarification, Councillor Elliott, it would be the committee recommends that council ask staff. Again, the committees don't give direction to staff.
Absolutely, thank you.
Just for clarification.
So what is on did you make a motion?
I did. I could rephrase it. I move that the committee ask council to direct staff to bring us their proposed ranking of priority for the remaining outstanding land development motions in Appendix A, so that council can have input into that.
Just for clarity, CAO, is it appropriate to make that motion at this point, or should the notice of motion come forward at a later date?
I would say that since it's part of the main topic being discussed and has come out of it, that it's fine to actually have that motion come forward. Again, this is a committee that just makes recommendations, no decisions, and it can go forward. It might behoove the committee to allow staff to provide some feedback over whether this is something that's simple or not. This is probably the best venue for that, and I'm sure Director Gao could speak to it if given the opportunity.
Through the chair, the question about whether this makes sense for staff, I think absolutely this is the type of work we wanted to be doing. I think, just in terms of today, we were hoping to provide a straightforward recommendation related to avoiding using the term low-hanging fruit, but we think we can get these to you very quickly and then work very quickly on all the other priorities. But I think in the interim, we can also come back with a list of prioritization related to Appendix A.
Thank you, Director Gao. Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I appreciate this motion from Councillor Elliott. I think perhaps there's even some motions on that list that could be rescinded because things have changed since they were originally passed, and so it would be great to clean things up. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Isaacson. Councillor Dowd.
Yeah, and I think it's a great idea to have a ranking of ranking of proposals for the use of city land. I think it's a great idea. I think it's there's quite a portfolio of motions we've made since 2022, I guess, about use of city-owned land. The one that I recall most recently is the suggestion that we have a process for building tiny homes and that we get a report from staff that includes using city-owned land for affordable housing and looking for a housing authority possibly. So all those things are there. I just think it's important that we get a proposed ranking of priorities, but that council take the time for council to rank the priorities. So, because that's the order I think it should go in.
Thank you, Councillor Dell. We have a recommendation on the floor. All those in favor? Those opposed? Unanimous. Thank you. So we move on today's agenda to 12.2, which is Powell River Community Forest fall grants. And I'm not sure who is speaking to the Chief Administrative Officer.
Thank you, Chair Paul. My full report is included in the agenda package, but I'll provide a high-level summary of the information contained within for the committee. So the Powell River Community Forest Working Group met on July 22nd and August 6th to discuss several items, including the proposed fall grant intake, potential funding available for fall grants, as well as the City of Powell River request for additional funding for in-stream projects. At the meetings, there was a consensus amongst the working group participants that a fall grant intake should take place in keeping with the council motion passed on March 20th, 2025, And again, that motion was that the 2025 community forest dividend and contributions to city projects and nonprofits be determined according to the same process as 2023 and 2022, with participation of the community forest working group recently appointed by council, and that the process for determining the dividends and contributions for 2026 be determined in collaboration with the community forest board, the city, the working group, and that the 2025 financial plan bylaw be amended accordingly. So to help provide some clarity for the 2025 fall grant intake process, the Powell River Community Forest Working Group felt it would be helpful if council identified a maximum dollar value for fall nonprofit grants prior to the grant intake closing date, which is currently scheduled for September 29th, 2025. It was felt that having a defined total would help the Powell River Community Forest Board in their review of applications, provide a sense to applicants of the total pot of money available, and assist council as the final decision makers. To help the working group arrive at a potential dollar value for the fall 2025 community projects, staff reviewed the breakdown of annual funding spent on nonprofit community projects from the Powell River Community Forest Reserve in the 5-year period of 2020 to 2024. And that average is approximately 1.2 million per year. So if this amount was utilized for the total 2025 nonprofit grant intake, recognizing that council has already allocated $560,387.88 in the spring intake for nonprofit grants, this would leave approximately $640,000 available for fall nonprofit grants. And so based on a review and discussion of this information at their August 6, 2025 meeting, the working group unanimously passed the following motion: that the Powell River Community Forest Working Group recommend that council set a maximum fall allocation for nonprofit grants of $640,000. It was also noted by the Powell River Community Forest Working Group that it would be helpful if council provided clarity regarding their priorities for fall grants, noting that various councils in the past had provided input on their current priorities, helping to guide the overall process. And again, at the August 6th meeting, the working group unanimously passed the following motion: that the Powell River Community Forest Working Group recommend that council confirm their current priorities for the Powell River Community Forest nonprofit grant program. So the financial implications are where this conversation gets tricky. As noted earlier, council has an approved dollar value of just over $425,000 in the 2025-2029 financial plan bylaw for nonprofit grants, and to date has approved nonprofit grants totaling just over $560,000. So there are numerous reports that show how the dollar value for the Powell River Community Forest grants in the financial plan bylaw was determined. However, at the crux of the conversation is whether this was meant to be a placeholder or whether this dollar value was to be stuck to. And so going by the March 20th council motion, there seems to be flexibility within that dollar value. But I'll note, and I say it in my report, this is really truly a political decision, as staff have noted that spending above that dollar value will have implications to future year budgets, including the possibility of the necessity for future year tax rate increases to account for the use of funds on non-city projects. The Chief Financial Officer is currently on vacation and has not had an opportunity to review the report to the committee of the whole, including any potential tax implications to future years. But significant background information has already been compiled by staff during the budgeting and grant allocation process. That information is contained within Schedule A to my report, including all the links. So lots of information there. Sorry for getting into so much detail, but I wanted to make sure to provide the overview to council. At the heart of it is whether or not to set a dollar value and set priorities, noting that if the decision is made to spend more than what is budgeted, there will be future implications. And I'm happy to answer any questions that the committee has.
Thank you, CEO. Sometimes appreciate it. Questions, Councillor Isaacs, followed by Councillor Southcott.
Thank you, Chair. One question about the recommendation 2, that the committee recommend that council confirm their current priorities for the PRCF nonprofit grant program. I'm unclear what that means. Does that mean that we are recommending to council that we reaffirm our list of strategic priorities, or that we are going to have a discussion to determine priorities? I need a bit more clarity on that.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Isaacson, the idea is that you will confirm priorities. They may align with what your strategic priorities are. It may be a, I don't want to use the term dumbed down, but narrowed scope because of the dollar value in relation to it. So the idea is that it's not confirming the strategic priorities, it's confirming priorities specific to the grant program.
And so are you expecting that conversation to happen right now and we confirm those priorities, or I'm under?
Yes, okay. Yes, and again, what is the purpose of the committee of the whole? To dive into the good stuff, right? And so that's why we're here. We're supposed to have a big conversation about it. Any recommendations that come out of it, if there is recommendations, who knows if you guys can come up and agree to something, we'll go to council. But that is the hope.
Yep.
Chair.
Councillor Isaacson for the question. Next, we have Councillor Southcott, followed by Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report. My question isn't really that specific, but I was a bit surprised by the $640,000 suggestion in number 1 of the recommendations. After the amount of debate and anguish that we experienced over trying to come to a balance between the city's ability to support the health and well-being of this community through the programs that we specifically are responsible for, and all the benefits that come from nonprofits. Clearly in this community, to me anyway, that the dichotomy there is not very well understood. And one can really appreciate generous community forest grants going to nonprofits and everybody's appreciation of what that does. However, there still, in my view, is that overall financial picture of how the city particularly maintains the complex, which has promised vast capital costs coming up that the community forest money could be used for. And I think this community's value of that facility is equal, if not greater, than what the nonprofits do as well. If you consider hockey and all the other things that go on there, pool, et cetera, and I don't think that came into the considerations this spring very, very strongly. So did that consideration come in to the conversation that resulted in the $640,000 figure here? Because that equates to probably about 2.5% of taxes alone, and the whole amount, 1.2 mil, is more like 4.5%. If we equate it to taxes. And I don't want to extend the argument at all, but if we can't find other sources to support the complex, it's either going to come out of tax money or some other cuts. And that worries me in a big way. So that's my question. Was that all considered in this 640?
Thanks, through the chair. I would say that the committee discussed it. That $1.2 million, again, is the average of what's been given out over the last 5 years. It's not a super sophisticated number to come up with, but if there was going to be a future allocation, that's where the number came from. It's a challenging conversation, and like I said, I want to say it's a political decision in terms of spending money now when we know that there's risks moving forward based on dollar values for projects that we may or may not be able to allocate funds for. And again, I pointed to the background materials that have been done, noting, of course, the CFO is not here and didn't comment on this report because a lot of information came to council through the budgeting cycle that talked about implications moving forward. Within that construct, I'll say that parameters in terms of how recreation is run, what costing is, what funding sources there are in constant flux. And one of the things from a staff perspective that I want to bring to council and what I need for myself is a better breakdown of that fund and that reserve fund and the projects that are in there to figure out where we sit in terms of the total fund moving forward. I think that work will require time and it will be tied into the budgeting process moving forward, which starts sooner rather than later. So if council was to make a decision to go with a $640,000 number, there could be future repercussions or implications for sure.
Councillor Southcott, thank you, CAO Sundance. And next up, we have Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Chair. So I sit on the working group, and one of the things the Community Forest Board would like to avoid in the upcoming, potentially upcoming fall intake for the community forest grants from nonprofits is to have some clarity around what council's hoping to do insofar as not getting people's hopes up if they don't, if it's an unachievable project. And we have a number of projects that council has considered in the previous one that we were delaying in hopes to have more information from other funding agencies such as the Cathet Hospital District. And we are going to be getting some answers on some of those soon, which may put those back on the table. And so hopefully council could provide some preliminary information around priorities for things that might eat up the majority of the budget. And the comment on the budget number that was put forward, it was the average of what we've been doing over the last 3 years as far as budget to nonprofits, and was a reflection of how do we implement that motion of council to do things the way we have done them in the past this year. And that would be one of the ways we interpreted that was to have a similar budget that we've had averaged over the last 3 years, notwithstanding what we have in our approved budget, because the motion to do things as we've done them in the past was made as part of approving that budget, and the understanding that we could make amendments if we as a council decided to do things that were higher than what was in the budget. And so how do we then have any certainty with the fall intake that there is a budget, that council is willing to move forward with amendments over and above what we've already done? And if so, do we have some priorities so that we can help the community who might be making applications to focus their applications on the things that council is looking to do with this particular portfolio in the fall intake, and thereby avoiding disappointment by everybody involved. And so while we can't make decisions ahead of making decisions, we could set some criteria. One of them could be a budget. That number was proposed at the community working group as a number that fit the general budget that we have been doing over the last 3 years. One of them could be to say we would prioritize health type facilities. That would be a way to make a recommendation. And we don't have them exhaustively listed here. I guess the intention is for us to sort out, knowing what we know, whether we want to provide direction here.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. Next on our speaking list, we have Mayor Wasnell, followed by Councillor Dowd.
Thank you. I'd like to move the motion that the committee recommend that council set a maximum fall allocation for nonprofit grants of $640,000.
We have a motion on the floor. Councillor Dowd, were you planning to speak to that motion?
I can adjust my speech to match the motion, I guess. And I want to make a couple of comments. The comments are basically the same. First, that this is different than the recommendations we had for the spring community forest grants. For the spring grants, we had a recommendation from the Community Forest Board, and we had a competing recommendations from city staff, and we hashed that out. But we had that motion, and I want to say thanks for the report, because it did a good job of putting together all of the different motions that have come about through that whole budget process. But the one that put it in the hands of the working group was the motion to, have the working group, which consists of 3 members of council and the Community Forest Board, come up with some recommendations together on what they could bring. And they've done that. They've come up with the $640,000. I'm prepared to accept that myself. We told people there would be a fall intake. And that's where we get to the part that's putting the Community Forest Board in a time crunch. September 29th is the date that they've been telling people is the date to have your applications in for community forest grants for the fall intake. So they really are asking in the report for an opportunity to know what it is that they're going to be trying to do then. And they're also asking for priorities. I would go with the current priorities that council has stated over and over again, but I think we owe it to ourselves and to the Community Forest Board and the public to give them some ideas about what will be available. And I think, we're going to have to go through it. We're going to have to look at what Councillor Southcott says is about the cost of maintaining the rec center, the pool, all the skating rinks, all of the facilities that are there, the rest of the infrastructure in the city. We're going to have to look at how to do that as we get into next year's budget and the following year's budget and 5-year plans. And we're going to have to, hopefully we'll get applications from a wide variety of community groups for if it is 640,000 in the fall, and then we will go through our normal process and sort those out. But I'm in favor of this motion. I'd like to go forward with it. I think it's been an incredible asset for this city to have the opportunity to be able to give community forest grants to nonprofits, and those nonprofits with seed money, multiply it by the volunteers in the community who gather around and make these things worth 10 times as much as the dollar value that's put in them. So I'll support this.
Thank you, Councillor Dowd. Appreciate your comments. I'm going to just say a couple of words about the motion on the floor as part of the working group. It's a breath of fresh air for that working group to meet on a regular basis, and I want to thank our CAO Sundance for being well informed as to what has taken place previously about the motions councils have made and our relationship with our Community Forest Board, which is, we all know in this community, is a very valuable one. And what they've brought forward, a whole range of years and items that they've built or put into this community. So we now have a little bit of certainty. We have some understanding between the two parties. Communication is at a much higher level. I feel a lot better about the working group getting together, and they feel, I believe, a lot better about being approached and coming to some agreements on numbers. So this is a nice welcome breath of fresh air where I think it's a win-win for both parties, and I wholly support this recommendation. And just as an example, this is just for nonprofits. Just last council meeting, we passed 2 motions to support and upgrade our complex to a very sizable amount of community forest funding. So that's just an example of how the Community Forest Board and their members work for us and the community to make good things happen. So having said that, I see one other hand in the air with Councillor Southcott. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move an amendment and change the 640 to 320, and I'll speak to that.
Okay, you have a amendment to change 640,000 to 320, and Councillor Southcott, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. So I took note of the reference to discussion that the working group and the Community Forest Board had. And I just want to preface this by saying I deeply appreciate the fact that there's this conversation, communication is going on. The reference was that to reference the amount offered as grants to average over the past 5 years, but the past 2 years, no, it was the past 3 years, I believe, wasn't it? 3 or 5?
I think we said 3. Was it
3?
5. Oh,
5.
Okay. 5.
So the past 5 years have been the most prosperous for the community forest. And for the city, the past 2 years have been have had tax revenues that were not restricted by a tax incentive revitalization bylaw that was applied to Catalyst from 2023 and before. So the city has received a little bit more, well, almost $2 million a year more in tax money from the mill lands. But I think it's very likely that the city will receive an amount from those lands reduced from even what the city received in 2023, which was about 3.2 million. I think that's pretty, from what we understand, I think we can expect that. I'm not saying that is going to happen, but I think that with the evidence that we have, that we would be wise to be very cautious with the money that we're allocating right now. Now, when personally I have a financial axe hanging over my head, like something like this, that I could compare the situation I've just described that I feel the city is in, I get really, really cautious. And we can spend the money if the axe doesn't fall later on. But right now, I am not comfortable with that, as much as I would dearly love to see this money go to nonprofits, because I see what the benefit of them, it's multifold. I still think that 320 would be more than what I was expecting to be allocated for this fall. And that is my reason. I think we're in a situation where we really need to take a long view here, because our tax revenues are going to change. And I've felt for a long time that we needed to be careful and keep money in reserve. And our financial officers back many years have been saying this to us. And I'm not sure that we've followed through with that. So that's my reasoning for this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Selcott. Councillor Elliott, go right ahead.
Speaking on the amendment, I would vote against this amendment, partly because I know what went into getting the original number, and I was hoping to give council the ability to make a difference on some of our health facilities that are on the docket, and that number that would preclude us from offering monies that would help those healthcare facilities, and I don't want to do that. And so I would vote against this for that reason. The comment on the additional tax funds received from the mill, we basically neutralized that in our operating budget by putting those all into reserves to help offset declines in the future. And so that was wise, and that those sit in reserves in order to help us with declines that may be coming up in the future. So I didn't want to mislead the public into thinking those increased dollars actually helped with our operational budget, because that wasn't really the case, since we set them all aside in reserves. And we now have that sitting in a reserve to help with the next few years. And while the Community Forest Reserve is also a reserve, it is a very special reserve set up by this community to support infrastructure in our community that is of a community nature. There's a multiplier effect that goes into providing dollars to nonprofits that exceeds the value of the money we give them by quite a bit. By enabling nonprofits to do the good work that we ourselves are not taking on directly, we provide a healthy community. And so I would vote against the amendment because it precludes the level of contribution that I feel is necessary for healthcare facilities that are badly needed in our community.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. Next on the speaking agenda, we have Councillor Almeida.
Thank you, Chair. What I have to say might not sit well with everybody. I'm not opposed to the amendment to reduce the amount, but I actually wouldn't vote for the main motion either way. Looking back to our conversation this spring, when we discussed the community forest original grants from the spring, the challenge that we had as a council was that there was a certain dollar amount that was earmarked in our budget based on communication from Community Forest last fall when the budget was starting, then a percentage that was allocated based on council's deliberation of the budget, and that amount was the $425,000 that the CAO has reported. But the grant request totaled $1.2 million, and we will never get to a point in life where the need is less than the amount of funds available. After much deliberations, we settled on $560,000, but that was 130 or so thousand more than what was in our budget. And our CFO warned us that any increase above what was in the budget was going to impact taxes next year. So we've already dipped our toe in that pool, and I'm a little hesitant to continue diving deeper in that without knowing full well what the tax implications are going to be for 26 and beyond. And as much as I am a big proponent of recreational sports, I'm actively involved with at least 4 different organizations in this community and on the board of 3 of them. And I want to see all of our nonprofits grow. I also am hesitant to make a change and an amendment that will impact our budget before we really know what that amount is. Regardless of Councillor Southcott's views, I'm okay with decreasing the amount, but I'm hesitant to actually do anything above 0. I'd rather us take a pause and come back with a bigger amount next spring once we have a better understanding of how everything will impact on our budget for 26 and beyond.
So Almeida, next up we have Councillor Dope, followed by Councillor Isaacson.
So I'm against the amendment. And the reason I have for being against the amendment is that on August 21st, our last council meeting, council approved going out to the world to request and to make contracts to do city projects with community forest money. And support from the community forest was attached to those to use the fall grant money for community forest to support those 2 projects. I didn't do the exact math to prepare for this, but I think between those 2 projects, the total alone for city projects be more than the 320,000. We'd have to be finding money from somewhere other than the community forest to do the projects we've already said that we would like to go ahead and do. I'm worried about that. I would leave nothing for nonprofits, maybe not even enough money in the community forest fall grants to do what we said 2 weeks ago we wanted to do. So, I think we need to get to it and make a decision. If we want to make it 320,000, 640, the reason I'm willing to support the 640 is we got an agreement with our working group that we appointed to try to negotiate and discuss with the Community Forest Board a positive way to go forward, and they seem to have come to some agreement. I'm willing to accept that. I think if we ask people to do these things for us, we should be willing to accept what their suggestion is at the end. But I'm, just waiting to see what everybody else has to think.
Thank you, Councillor Dote. Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you, Chair. There was a phrase I learned from one of our presentations at one of the educational conferences we went to that says you have as much money as you're willing to tax for. And we are in such a time of uncertainty. The question for me is, what am I willing to tax for when things are tight in the community? When am I willing to ask taxpayers to pay a little bit more because there are certain things that I find that are important? And this conversation encompasses so many things, our relationship with the community forest, which is, I think, more fruitful in the past month than it has been in the past year or two. And so I appreciate that forward momentum. Also on my mind are the issues that Councillor Southcott raised about being really prudent with our money because we cannot guarantee that revenue sources are going to be the same. I think it feels very good to grant to community. It's very hard to say no to community. And And so when I am faced with a decision like this, I kind of balance again, what am I willing to tax for? Because ultimately, all of the money that taxpayer revenue is what we have the domain over. I think what I find difficult with deciding on the amendment or even the main motion is actually what our priorities are and what we decide our priorities are. So if we tell community forest anything that aligns with our strategic priorities, that's too broad for me. There's actually very few things that I would want to grant for this fall. Some of them are related to the healthcare facilities that are looking for capital investment, or capital granting, like Foundry or McClat. Those are really important to me, and they depend on where things go with the regional hospital district. And so I'm kind of uncomfortable with making any decision until those happen. So maybe I'm gonna look to corporate officer staff for advice. If I wanted to postpone, I don't know the right words, postpone this motion until after priorities, that second motion that recommendations come up has been set, how might I do that?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
If my interest was making some sort of motion to postpone this until the second discussion on priorities happens, how might I do that?
Oh, okay. My sense is that we could either vote it down, or I don't think we should necessarily defer it, but if it was voted down, then you could move to the second one, but that might put out the idea that no one's in favor of it.
But we're speaking to an amendment right now. We have an amendment motion on the floor. I think we need to deal with that first. So, is there anybody else that wants to comment on the amendment? Councillor Elliott, last words.
It's a procedural point of order, I guess. It is, and maybe our corporate officer could help us if he's here. I don't know if he is. It is my understanding you could make a motion to postpone to a specific time. And so that could be a motion to postpone to after the question of priorities is dealt with to a later point in this meeting. And it's always okay to do that, but you'd have to get the agreement of, we'd have to vote in favor.
The amendment. Are you speaking to the amendment?
I'm speaking to procedures as to Councillor Isaacson's question about how to table or postpone till after a conversation. She's saying it.
So can we deal?
She is saying that it's relevant to her
amendment,
what the priorities are as to whether she's in favor of this or not, and it affects her vote. And so we haven't had the discussion on the priorities, so that's making it hard for her. So she could move to postpone it till after our priorities conversation, and then we could retable it back up at the end of that conversation. I think that procedurally that is correct.
CAO Sundance, you had your hand in the air.
So a council member may make the following motions to take precedence when council is considering a question. And so the challenge is that there is an amendment on the floor that we are looking at. So you refer, amend, postpone, or adjourn, but it's specific to the one that's on there, which is the amendment. So I think we have to deal with the amendment first, and the options are refer, amend, postpone indefinitely or to a specific time. So it could be postponed to a specific time, which would be after, but then we'd have to go back one more because there's the other motion that's on the floor, and that one would have to be postponed again, and both of those would have to be postponed until the second one on the agenda is dealt with, which is the priorities. So again, deal with the amendment, postpone that, go back, deal with the actual motion, postpone that, and then we could move on to the other one. And again, if the motion is made to postpone indefinitely, it's not amendable or debatable, with the exception that a motion to postpone to a specific time may be debated only as to the time and reasons.
Thank you very much for that clarification. We are now on the amendment, and I will speak to the amendment because I haven't yet, and that is to say that your community forest working group spent more than one meeting on this topic and coming to this figure, which all were in agreement when we left the meeting, and everybody was in a good mood in regards to that decision being made so that we could move forward together. And I see this as a kind of a deterrent to goodwill, not only to your hardworking members of council on that committee, but to the community forest group as well. And so I will be voting in favor or not in favor of this amendment. Having said that, all in favor of the amendment on the floor? Those opposed? It is defeated. 4-3, and I believe the 3 members that did not raise their hand for the public's notification voted in favor of the amendment. I didn't see any other hands. Oh, you did. Did you put your hand up? Yeah, you didn't raise your hand. Yeah. Thank you very much. Okay, it is defeated. The amendment is defeated. Now we are back to the main motion. And the recommendation is that the committee recommend that council set a maximum amount of $640 for the fall community forest grant to nonprofit organizations. Councillor Isaacs.
I move to postpone this vote until after, this motion until after the discussion on priorities has taken place.
Okay, we have an amendment on the floor. Councillor Dowd.
I don't know why we would want to postpone it. Why don't we have a discussion we have to have on the value and whether or not we want to make recommendations to the community forest board on our priorities. I think we should get on with it rather than arguing about whether we should postpone it after we're done talking about whether to postpone it.
Okay, thank you for that. We're going to call the question. All in favor of the amendment on the floor?
It's not an amendment.
A motion on the floor. All in favor? All in favor?
Chair, I was hoping to speak to the motion before we call the question.
Last words. Go right ahead.
Okay.
Last words.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's a bit of a chicken and egg deal. And if we're willing to provide money toward a priority and sorting out whether we're in agreement with those priorities is a bit of a chicken and egg thing. And so I'm not gonna support the motion to postpone because I think it puts us in a awkward back and egg, holding something hostage for something else. I think if we're willing to spend money on a priority, we should say so. And then we should work on coming to some consensus on what those priorities might be.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. I'm going to call the question. All in favor of the motion to postpone until after discussion of Powell River Community Forest Grant priorities. Thank you. Those opposed? Motion is defeated. Thank you. Now we get back to our recommendation, and that is the committee recommend that council set a maximum fall allocation for nonprofit grants of $640,000. All in favor? Those opposed? Motion passes. Would you like your vote recorded, members that voted in opposition?
They're automatically recorded, Chair.
Thank you. So that brings us to, I believe, question period, once my agenda comes up on my screen here.
Chair, we still have the second part of this.
We still have the second part.
Yeah.
Number 2. And the motion, would somebody like to make that?
I was going to make so the motion isn't specific about what our priorities are. And so I'm thinking it doesn't do a lot as phrased. And so I would propose that the committee recommend to council to confirm their current priorities for the Powell River Community Forest nonprofit grant program are health-related facilities.
We have a motion on the floor that these will be targeted to health facilities. Councillor Duff.
That's a tough one, and I didn't think it would be easy to set these priorities. One of the problems I have with using community forest grants for healthcare facilities is that I firmly believe that healthcare is a federal and provincial responsibility, and we should hold the federal and provincial government's feet to the fire to do what they're not doing and provide a satisfactory level of health care to everybody in the province. It's not happening now, and it's not going to happen more quickly if we try to pay for it from our municipal taxes or from our community forest grants. That's the problem I have with it. And, I don't know what I would propose as an alternative, but that's my comment. I think we shouldn't be allowing the downloading of facilities costs from the Ministry of Health.
Thank you, Councillor Doubt. Mayor Wasnow.
I will not support this for the reasons Councillor Doubt suggested. It would simply make the federal and provincial government feel that they can download even more.
Thank you, Mayor Wasnow. Councillor Almeida.
Thank you, Chair. I won't support this for a different reason. It's partly because it's too vague. I think if we leave it as it is, there could be arguments made for multiple different types of health-related facilities. What's to say a gazebo or a pergola on a property doesn't improve the mental health of the people that use that facility? So I think it doesn't help our cause in this particular situation.
Being no further hands, I'm going to just make one comment, and that is I will not support this motion that's on the floor for the simple reason that I think it's a little premature for priorities, and I would like to see recommendations come back from our Community Forest Board where we'll see what their priorities are prior to making our own priorities at this stage of the game. Oh, having said that, Councillor Elliott, last word.
Thank you. So if we vote this one down, that means we have no input to the Community Forest Board about council's priorities, and they specifically asked us to give them some. And so I'm okay if people are uncomfortable with this particular priority. I feel like focusing the funds that we do have on a particular purpose would get us a little bit further. Perhaps people could make motions about what they think it should look like. And I don't think confirming our priorities without saying what they are is terribly useful to the Community Forest Board. So the Community Forest Board wants input from council about how they can come back with recommendations that are a little more consistent with our priorities. And if we do not tell them what our priorities are, that's a hard job for them. And so at that working group, if you recall, Jim, they asked specifically for our priorities.
Okay, so okay, Councillor Isaacs, go right ahead.
Thank you. I'm going to propose an amendment, and I don't know if the amendment's going to be too much, so I'll look to you, Councillor Elliott. So the amendment is kind of comma, and then adding at the end, affordable housing, recreation, culture, and social goals for youth, and reconciliation. And to speak to those items, I took a look at our priorities in our current list of strategic priorities, and which of them might be eligible for community forest funding based on our current policy. Our current policy talks about capital investments. We're not spending money on services or buying supplies. We're talking about investments in the community. And if a group could hit on these, it's broader. It might, I'm offering it as something, hearing some concerns about the health-related facilities. Could it get us closer as a council to supporting a motion with some specific priorities in there? There's a lot in there that relates more to services that, again, would not align with the partnership policy. But if there are things that do, I'd be willing to entertain them. So that's my offer for an amendment.
Thank you. Just to clarify, before I get to the Mayor Wasnow staff, I just want to ask a question. Was Community Forest looking for broad-ranging categories such as this, or were they looking for more specific type priority projects coming forward from council as they recommended we brought forward last time for the rec complex upgrades?
My understanding from the discussions that the working group were broader, not specific.
Okay, thank you.
And just to make sure that my amendment reads correctly, the recreation, culture, and social goals for youth should all be one. So whether we use semicolons or something, recreation generally is not meant to be there. Yeah, social goals for youth, semicolon after youth. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, speaking to the amendment, Mayor Wasnow, followed by Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Chair. So I would not support this because I think what is required is for the Board of Community Forests and our council to sit down together. We can have this discussion, trying to put together what would be meaningful for them is going to be extremely difficult because there's going to be massive amount of interpretation. So I would vote to defeat this and get a direction to council or to staff to set up a meeting between the two boards. Thank you.
You're looking for further clarification, Mayor, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. Councillor Dillon.
And, I'm going to vote against this amendment because it just makes it more confusing with the original motion that I said I wouldn't support. So I won't support the downloading of healthcare costs on the community forest. And I don't see it as helpful to add a number of broad categories in there, because if I was sitting on the community forest board, I would look at that and not really see much direction from it. And we're not talking about trying to divide $3 or $4 or $5 million. We're trying to avoid what I think is left of that 640, which, if my math is right, is something like around $200,000 that hasn't been already confirmed. Because, as I said before, on the 21st, we agreed to some civic capital projects, which the community forest provided support for additional money from the fall grants to come out of that 640,000. So I think we're, I find myself agreeing with the mayor. I think the only way we're going to get through this battle, sit down with the community forest board and council and go through and try to figure it out one at a time.
Thank you, Councillor Dowd. CAO Sundance, you have a comment.
I was just going to clarify that the funds that were approved at the August council meeting for the city projects are different and not included in the $640,000 value that's before our council committee today.
I'm happy to learn that.
Okay, so last word, Councillor Selcott, and we're going to vote.
Thank you, Chair. I do support this. I think the three particularly healthcare facilities we're thinking of do or they have significant provincial support provided, and everywhere else these kind of facilities have emerged in community. There's been a partnership between provincial support and community support. So that's why I do support the health-related facilities part of this. I think to add the rest of it broadens the specificity of the direction, and I don't think it restricts the community forest unduly. I also, reading our strategic priorities, these are relatively consistent with our strategic priorities that we wrote. And I also don't really have any sufficient faith in the group of 7 of us coming up with something that would work better than this. So that's why I support this in terms of satisfying this resolution.
The last word before we vote. Sorry, Councillor Elliott. You can put your hand
Oh,
up.
I have not spoke to the amendment yet.
You haven't?
No.
Didn't you make it? No.
No,
it was
she made the motion. She made the motion.
Okay, I'm going to let you speak before I do. Go right ahead.
And each of us is allowed 1 turn. So I'm gonna vote in favor of the amendment, and I see that it aligns very well with our already decided strategic priorities for council, and I think that if we make strategic priorities, we should reflect them when we're talking about our priorities. So I do support the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. I'll just say that this is valuable information, all these broad categories being referenced, but it's going to take a lot more dialogue, meeting face-to-face with our community for us before we can really pinpoint what we're talking about here. And so that's why I'm going to vote against the amendment. So, having said that, all in favor? Those opposed? Motion passes. That is now added to the main motion. And I'll call for a vote on the main motion that includes the amendment. Be clear, all in favor of the motion on your screen.
Just trying to wait till it gets, I think that there has to be a semicolon after house-related facilities in order to make it consistent with the rest of the list. Thank you.
Thank you. All in favor? Those opposed? Pass. Thank you. So we have now concluded our business on our agenda today. We now move to public clarification, and seeing Mr. Galinsky. Is Mr. Galinsky on the line today? No, he's not. So call for members of the public. Question period. Is there anybody that wishes to come forward? Hello, Mr. Martin.
Good afternoon. I have a question, but first I just have a couple of statements that basically rebut some things that were said by council earlier. The visitor center answers the phone, Cothet Visitor Center. Facebook says Cothet Tourism Society manages the Cothet Visitor Center. My question is, 1 second here. Will City Council consider requesting that Cothet Tourism Society install a Welcome to Powell River sign at the visitor center?
Sorry, ask, what was your ask specifically?
I'm asking if City Council will consider requesting that the Cothet Tourism Society install a Welcome to Powell River sign at the visitor center. We do not have a Welcome to Powell River sign there. And the phone is being answered, Cothet. Tourists are confused. Tourists are calling Powell River Cothet. We need to, in order to comply with the agreement, the Tourism Society is supposed to be promoting Powell River. The phone should be answered Powell River. The building should be Powell River, possibly Cothet, Powell River Cothet Visitor Center. It's important that you comply.
Our CAO had his hand in the air.
Again, sorry, just a process question. This is public clarification as opposed to asking council to make motions. So I'm not trying to be annoying, but it's like we do have to kind of stick to our general process here.
I was aware of that, but I wanted to ask the question anyway. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Wasnow, you have a response.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, as I discussed earlier, I'm going to have to leave. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Have a good day. Miss Burton, how are you this afternoon?
Thank you. I'm fine, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to ask a question on agenda item 7.2. The president of Cathet Tourism Society is a former city councillor and CAO, and the current CAO for Coahoma Nation. Is the committee aware that the perception that by not seeking compliance and enforcement of section 5.2 of the service agreement is due to the committee's ongoing relationship with the president of Cathet Tourism?
CAO, do you have a response?
I was asking the committee.
What I would ask is for you to clarify section 5.2. What is section 5.2?
Section 5.2 deals with the,
I think 7.2.
7.2?
With the reports, the reporting, quarterly reports shall provide the city with progress reports, shall provide details of the activities.
I actually can provide an update on this. I reached out when it was pointed out, and they are going to start providing detailed reports to council quarterly. The comment that I received is that historically it's been done through the liaison who sits on the society board, and that has been good enough in the past. But since the contract has other language, they will be providing those moving forward.
Thank you for that clarification.
Sure.
You
Just the
still,
perception that's
are you
being
asking your question of each individual council or a council generally?
I just want you all to be aware the perception that's being created is that because Russell Brewer is the president of Cathet Tourism, that he is getting concessions that other.
Point of order, Chair.
Hey, Councillor Elliott, you wanted to respond to that.
Just to the point in general that contract management is not something that council does. We don't get involved with contract management. And so we asked the question whether there was any evidence of any wrongdoing, and the answer came back no. And so that I believe we will have some reporting that is available to folks in the future as it becomes in, that tells us where they spent their money as part of the contract. But we ourselves do not manage those contracts here on council. So the question you're asking us is if we're going to get involved with operations, and it's not something that is appropriate.
So I'm gonna ask one follow-up question to yours because it's interesting, and that is reading the pro forma. It is stipulated there that the Tourism Society must have audited financial statements given to the city on an annual basis. Is that taking place?
Yes.
Thank you for that answer. Yes, Councillor Slethcott.
Just a wee factoid. Mr. Brewer was on the board of the tourism long before he was employed by the Tla'amin Nation. I'm not sure if that's all that significant, but he was there before he was up there.
I wasn't tying it into the fact that he's CAO for Coahoma. I was talking about his ongoing relationship with all of you.
Thank you, Ms. Burton. Any other questions from the gallery? Anybody online? No one coming forward. I will call for adjournment. And we are adjourned at 5:37 p.m. Thank you very much, everyone.